Are we going too far when we're vetting politicians? This is the discussion I'm about to have with my next guest, but let me set it up for you. So, when you're looking at the background on the elected officials or those running for office, the topic here is, are journalists going too far? Instead of examining their position, on health care and immigration and various important issues, are we more inclined to focus on what they did in college? Well, Tom Bevan is joining me now, and he says that enough is enough, and he points to a recent... Hi, Tom. I'm going to tell everybody how you're pointing to a recently Daily Beast column regarding Ted Cruz, which focuses on the Texas senator's choice of wearing paisley bathrobe when walking around Princeton University as a student. Tom Bevan, you're the co-founder and co-executive editor of RealClearPolitics.com. Good to see you.
Hi, Arthel. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So this Daily Beast piece was sort of egregious in a couple of particulars. Number one, we've become accustomed to, especially folks who are running for president, getting their backgrounds looked at, calling up past acquaintances, et cetera, et cetera. Ted Cruz is not running for president. It's 3.5 years away. He hasn't made himself a candidate yet. And so it's just interesting that we're seeing this kind of piece on a person of Ted Cruz's stature, this early out, before he's even declared that he has any interest in running for president. So that was number one. Number two was, I'm not against journalists calling up, past acquaintances, not against them looking into, investigating. We need to know, we want to know about these people's pasts, what makes them tick, that sort of thing.
Right.
But this particular article, and this is something that we saw with Mitt Romney last time, calling up former classmates and getting their sort of decades-old recollections is not always newsworthy. And what you had in the case of Ted Cruz is you had 4 people go on the record with this reporter from the Daily Beast. 2 of them actually said nice things, really nice things about Ted Cruz. One of them was sort of, moderately negative, said, look, he came to Princeton with a fully formed ideology, and he hasn't changed. He's sort of rigid in his thinking. Okay, fine. And then you had his freshman roommate, who is now a Hollywood screenwriter, so that gives you an idea of his political affiliations, as I probably stereotype. But saying awful things about Ted Cruz and saying he's horrified that Ted Cruz could even hold power and we should be afraid of this and on and on. And so saying, these terrible things about him, and then also dropping in this sort of anecdote about Ted Cruz, wandering down to, he lived in a co-ed dorm, it wasn't a segregated dorm, but down to the end where some girls lived in a paisley bathrobe. And what the Daily Beast did was to take that particular offhand anecdote, recollection that's, 20 plus years old,
I'm sorry, how many years old? What did you say? I'm sorry, Tony.
Well, he graduated from Princeton in 1992. So
yeah.
This is 21 years. And actually, he was
so let me jump in there because I get your point. You're like, look, the guy is going to his, he's going to the community bathroom in the dorm. So what? He's got to walk from his dorm room to the bathroom, and he's wearing whatever robe he chooses to wear. What's the big whoop? Okay, that's what you do in college. Sometimes people do funny things like that just to get attention because it's funny. So now if we're going to go back to that, I ask you, so does it matter if, back to the college culture, not mine, but for a lot of people who smoked pot in college, is that fair game for when they become, big and famous and running for a major office?
I mean, sure, but we have a president who admitted that he did cocaine, so I'm not sure it's really much of an issue anymore.
He's not the first president to admit that either.
Right. So, but getting back to what the Daily Beast, what was really egregious about what the Daily Beast did is they took this anecdote. Again, they had 4 people go on record, only one of who had really negative things to say. They used those negative recollections to sort of frame the piece. They used it as the lead of the piece and the conclusion of the piece, and they put it on the front page of their site with the title, Ted Cruz's creepy years, creepy in quotations, and with the subtitle asking the question of its readers, can a master debater who walked around in a paisley bathrobe in college become president of the United States? Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out the sort of crude double entendre there, and it's just, they're effectively sort of leading.
So when did this shift begin, Tom? When did this shift begin? You think?
The shift toward
in
this
terms
kind
of this sort of coverage that you're talking about.
I think it's happened in the last few cycles. I mentioned this piece. We saw something like this and we usually do see it actually with the press sort of pulling this kind of stuff with Republicans and conservatives. I mean, we saw it in 2008. John McCain, New York Times, ran a front-page story accusing him basically of having an affair with a lobbyist. There was never any evidence to prove that. In fact, she settled out of court with the New York Times just in May. She filed a $27 million defamation suit. We saw it in this last cycle with both Rick Perry, who the Washington Post ran a story about him and a ranch that had a derogatory name. It was a leftover from.
So is it just the conservative politicians being attacked, do you think, or does it go across the board?
I actually wasn't able to find any instances of where liberals, at least in recent memory, were sort of terribly mistreated by the press, and where they had things taken sort of out of context from their past and used against them. It's just not something that we typically see.
Well, Tom, I know that you spelled it all out in your article on realclearpolitics.com, so we'll encourage everyone to go take a look, and they can really, read that article, A Beastly Attack on Ted Cruz. Tom, Bevan, thank you very much.
All right, Phil, thank you.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.